Hey everyone. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am in New York City this week. I'm in New York. I've got a lot of different meetings ranging from book meetings to speaking meetings to executive meetings to catch-ups to all sorts of stuff. And we got to talk about culture. We got to talk about culture. You may know that I wrote Contagious Culture back in 2015. Then I wrote Contagious You back in 2019. And the reason for both of those books was because, Contagious Culture was really written to help companies and teams look at how do they change their workforce? How do they change the culture that they're in? How do they actually truly, authentically and sustainably create culture transformation so that they were thinking their best, they were creating their most innovative products, they had psychological safety, they had a great culture. Like how did they do that? So that was Contagious Culture. If you read that book, you know that the little secret about that book is that you are the culture. Each one of us is the culture. How I show up in a room, how I show up with my team, how I show up for my people, that is actually what's creating the culture. Whether I'm the CEO of the company or I am the person who is greeting people in the lobby of my organization, every single one of us creates a culture. So I wrote that book, and then we had a lot of fun with that book. We did a lot of keynotes, we did a lot of good stuff. And what I noticed from those keynotes that is starting to happen again, so this is why I'm bringing this up to you. But what I noticed in those keynotes was a lot of people afterwards would come up to me, especially leaders and executives, and they'd come up and they'd say some version of, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you just gave that talk. My people really need to have that, but I don't need it. Like I'm good. Like I know how to create good culture, and I'm showing up really good, but my people, they really needed to hear that message. So I'm really glad you had it." And too many times after that person would leave, often asking me to email them, please, the culture change checklist. Hey, Nace, I'm glad you just talked about contagious culture, but if you could send me the checklist of what I need to do to really make my culture healthy, that would be awesome. Too many times after that conversation would happen, some form of conversation would follow with the people around that would say something to the effect of, hey, gosh, of all the people in the room that needed to hear that message, it was that guy or that woman or that person that really needed to hear the message, because that's the person actually that we keep quitting. That's the person that keeps creating the challenges in our organization and that's having a negative impact on the culture. That person is the culture. That person is why we're doing this. So Contagious You, and this is really fresh because I just met with my agent about this, talking about this next book project we're doing. And so Contagious You was born out of this idea of like, oh my gosh. So we wrote Contagious Culture, and in Contagious Culture, you learn how to do it, but there's still people that didn't understand that it was for them. I am the culture. And then the other part was the people who did get that it's them and they're doing their IEP and they're really working on their intentional energetic presence and how they show up. However, they are having to manage the people that don't think this applies to them. So Contagious You, I wrote as a love letter basically to who I call the Georges and the Georgettes, or the G's, for the people who thought this doesn't apply to them. So they're actually the ones that are leaving dead bodies behind, and they're looking for the culture change list because they want to really change the culture and they want to be more innovative and they want to have better leadership. So they want to do culture change. And so it was for them to really start to say like, hey, this actually might be you. Like, oh, wow, I might actually be the person who's creating some riff in our culture and our organizational health. So it was for them. But it was also for the people who, as I said, were doing it, but needed now more tools and more support in holding their own space, showing up really well, navigating the people, the Georges, who had a hard time with the way that they showed up and how they created culture. So that's why I wrote Contagious You. So there you go. That brings us to the present day. So now we're getting going on this next book project. I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm in New York and I'm doing all these meetings. And I got to tell you, the universe works in really interesting ways, because I am not kidding you. Every single person I've met with this week so far, and we're only halfway through the week, the conversation has been something around whether they're an executive in the current company and they're staying and they're doing really great work with their organization. Because, fortunately, there are some really great clients that we get to work with. Have got CEOs and executives and senior leaders who really, really get that culture change starts with them first. And so they're doing the work. So whether it's somebody who's inside the company and they're leading it effectively right now, or it's an executive who's trying desperately to change the culture and can't figure out why it's not shifting, or why their sales aren't where they want them to be, or why the team isn't performing they want them to perform. So they're still in the company, but they're having a hard time. Or it's an executive who's left because they found that they couldn't really change culture in their last organization. They couldn't get their executive team's buy-in, or for whatever reason, it didn't work. So this could be executive senior leaders is generally who I get to have these conversations with. So they may have left, or they're looking to leave, Or in some cases, I have been meeting with some people who have left. They've left their companies that they were working at. They, for whatever reason, they left to go either start their own thing and now they're consulting, or they're looking for something in another company. So any of these categories, the common theme that keeps coming up again and again and again is, who is the leader you want to be? Who is the leader you want to become? How is it that you want to show up? What kind of leadership do you want to be bringing to your organization? What do you want your organization to be known for? What is the legacy you want to leave in terms of your people and how they remember you when they no longer work there or when you're gone? That's one side of the conversation. The other thing that keeps coming up is the absolute waste of time. And maybe it's not a waste of time, but it's up there. The absolute waste of time and energy and whack-a-mole creation that gets created when you try and create culture change, but you don't change your leadership first. And this is where I started. This has gone a little bit into some other details for you. But here's the deal. You will not change your culture for real, sustainably, or healthfully. You will not change your culture if you do not start with changing yourself as a leader first in your organization. It just won't happen. It won't happen. I've done the legwork. I've been doing this work for 23 years. I've worked with companies for 23 years, companies and business leaders. For those of you that have watched how we've done this, we started with lots and lots of things before 2009. Then we really got into the methodology. I started the methodology, really, really grew that from like 2009 to 2019, like really 10 years, really building this methodology. And the whole message was that people think that culture is created outside of themselves, but really each one of us is creating the culture. So this whole thing of trying to create culture from the outside in, it just doesn't work. However, companies keep doing it. They keep doing it. They keep doing check the box initiatives, not because they're bad, because they don't know different yet. And they are missing the piece that is absolutely essential in order to make that culture change shift. And that culture change shift is when you really start to do your own internal leadership work and you start to work on your own intentional energetic presence, your intentions, your energy, your presence, and how you're showing up. So for those of you that watched from 2009 to 2019, we really doubled down on the IP methodology. We really doubled down on this whole thing of like, you are the culture. It's not created out there. It's created in here. Pandemic hit. We shifted gears a little bit. You've really seen us build out the Positive Energy Workplace Initiative over the last couple of years. It's still in its beginner stages, really, of building that initiative out to pull leaders and companies together that care very much about creating positive energy workplaces and really doing the work required to create awesome and sustainable culture change. But we are back to grassroots again, which is this awareness that I find I'm starting to take for granted. So I'm bringing it up again. But it's this idea that trying to create culture change without first changing yourself and your leadership and the way you're showing up and the way you're taking care of yourself and your level of intentionality and the way you walk into a room and the way you think about things. Trying to create culture change without changing yourself first is whack-a-mole. It's a Band-Aid. It's tilt-a-whirl. It's all the things that make us dizzy and that create a lot more noise and temporary solutions because we're not actually doing the work from the inside out. So until you change your leadership, until you change your leadership team, until you change the intentions and the awareness and the presence and the energy of your workforce, you're not going to create sustainable, positive culture change. You just won't. Everything, it's all a Band-Aid. It just is. The latest study that I saw, I think it's like most companies spend, it's an average of $2,200 a year per person on in their company on culture change initiatives, leadership development, whatnot. And only 30% of CHROs report that there's a positive return on investment. That is usually because they're doing skills training, they're doing, culture initiatives, they're doing fun things, they're doing things to change the culture, but they're not actually addressing the inside. They're not actually addressing the intentional energetic presence, the intentions, energy, and presence, the way that each leader shows up in the company. So if they're not addressing that, it's not sustainable. So food for thought for you today, invitation to really start to think about who is the leader you are right now. No matter where your leaders, you may be the best leader ever, like fantastic. So many of you, like phenomenal leadership. And there's always a next place to go to. So even if it's growing other leaders and really modeling and sharing what you're learning for yourself with your people, who's the leader you are today? Who's the leader you want to become? So who are you being? What do you want to put in place to start to become even more the leader you want to be in order to create the culture you want to create? And oh, by the way, let's take a step back and be really intentional about the culture we want to create. What is the culture you're creating and why? If it's just to check it off the box because it's important, it's a buzzword, people want good culture, it's important for performance. Yes, that's all true. But I want you to really take a step back and look at, what does culture mean? Why is it important to you? What's actually like what is the current state of your culture? And what do you need to do in order to shift it in the direction you want it to go? And this is a really great conversation to have with your leadership team. It's a really great conversation to have with yourself. And then from there, you start to impact your workforce and your workplace. And this impacts everything. This impacts people's levels of engagement, which you got to actually be working on the energy before you work on the engagement, because engagement is a lagging indicator. Energy you can shift in the moment, but you got to be aware of what it is, and you got to have the leaders modeling it. So this, there's a lot of different ways to get at this. If you are interested in this conversation, this is such a rich conversation. And I have started to go back to some of my own grassroots around going and really working more deeply with executives one-on-one, and also with their executive teams to really look at what's going on for you. What are you creating? Who do you need to be? How do you need to shift it? And then, of course, from there, we can support their workforce however they need it with our programming and our platform and everything. But for today, just really think about this. Who are you being as a leader? Where are you hoping that your culture is going to change? Where are you just checking a box? Are you leading in a way that is going to really create the legacy that you want? What support do you need? And, as always, feel free to reach out and sign up for one of these executive forums. If you'd like to talk to me, you're welcome to set up a call. Happy to have a discussion with you to look at how this thinking might help, how we might work together. Also happy to just, get into a conversation with you about who you're becoming. This is a really big question. And I think as we move into this next chapter of all of our lives together, this is really important that we're really paying extra attention to this now. Okay. Take care of yourself. Thanks for being here. Bye.